hidden inside and afraid. Does it sound familiar? Perhaps many of us have had that experience in these recent days, all gathered in our homes and worrying about what is outside the doors. And that seems to be the case throughout history. There are time and time again when people gather and are one with those closest to them and wonder about what lies beyond, what is ahead. Such is the case in our gospel today on this Divine Mercy Sunday. The disciples are locked behind doors, afraid. This Jesus has died. Word has come that he's risen, but they're still afraid. And through those locked doors, the risen Christ appears, and the first thing that he says to them, which they needed to hear, is, "Peace be with you." He wanted to calm their fears. What he had promised, that he would rise on the third day, had come to pass, and there he was right before them. They could behold the risen Lord. And the second thing he says is, "Receive my spirit." He breathes on them, the very spirit, the very force and life of God he shares with them, now risen from the dead. And the third thing he tells them is, "Whose sins you forgive are forgiven. Whose sins you retain are retained." So Jesus comes into their fear behind these locked doors and simply says, "Know my peace, receive my spirit, and extend God's mercy to others." That's what Divine Mercy Sunday is all about. It's the celebration of what God has accomplished through the life, passion, death, and resurrection of Jesus Christ. And God's mercy is simply God's desire to draw us to himself, that we might be able to experience the fullness of God's love for us. And we put all sorts of limits on mercy and all sorts of limits on forgiveness, and we still remain paralyzed sometimes in fear. And Jesus, risen, comes to his disciples and says, "Know my peace. Experience my spirit. And reveal my mercy to others." We're left with Thomas. What's interesting, if you listen, is that a week later, the doors are still locked. Apparently, they're still a little afraid. And yet, Jesus comes to them again, and this time Thomas is with them. Thomas must have wondered the whole week before, can it really be true what the others have said, that he's risen from the dead? But I won't believe it until I see it. Prove it to me. We live in a world of that, don't we? Everything has to be proven. But belief is something different. And when Thomas beholds Jesus, he simply says, "My Lord and my God, you are risen." And he touches the wounds of Jesus. The risen body of Jesus still bears the wounds of his crucifixion. Jesus is still one with us in bearing wounds, and comes to them and says, "Behold me now in your midst." And Thomas makes that proclamation of Jesus being Lord and God. And Jesus says, "Thomas, you believe because you can see me and touch these wounds. But blessed are those who believe, who have not seen." And that's what faith really is, isn't it? It's about our ability in whatever situation we find ourselves to say, Christ is risen. And no matter what I face, I have the opportunity to experience his peace. I have the opportunity to experience his spirit. And I have the gift of experiencing this divine mercy, not only poured out into my life, but into the lives of those that I'm willing to proclaim it to. We must let others know that. And when we're given that opportunity to finally go out and be in community again, we must be witnesses to that. Because we must, in the face of fear, say, Christ is risen, and we can face whatever we must because he's with us. And will not be overwhelmed by fear, because the peace of Christ gives us what the world can't give us, what no report can give us, what no announcement can give us. And the Spirit of the risen Christ is always with us. He has breathed his Spirit into the living body of Christ, his church, and so remains with us. So we give thanks to the Lord for the gift of divine mercy. Divine mercy revealed not only to the 12 and especially Thomas that 1 week later, but to you and I here and now. For we desperately need to know that peace. We need to experience the very power of his Spirit in our lives right now. And we must celebrate the gift of this divine mercy, which is offered to the entire world as we come together and celebrate this Eucharist.